said, if you want to join the European Trade Pact, here's what you have to do. You have to sell us cheap gas transshipped from Russia. You have to privatize, that is, turn over all your industry. You have to go through a massive austerity program, which is going to triple unemployment. Basically, they wanted to do the Greece job on Ukraine. They're going to turn into another Greece. And if you want to trade with Europe, here's the price. And the reason they wanted to open to Europe is that they're hoping that maybe some people are hoping eventually they'd join the EU, which would allow them to leave Ukraine and move to Germany and England. That was the hook. But if you want to connect to Europe, to Western Europe, basically you have to turn over your industries, throw another million people out of work minimum. Literally, they're going to literally deliberately crank up massive unemployment. So Putin, not being a bad chess player, said, oh, well, since they're putting the squeeze on Ukraine, I'll make them a counteroffer. Here's $15 billion and cheap heating gas for your people, no strings attached, except that you join our trade pact, not the IMF European World Trade Organization pact. And so obviously, the one which was punishment and the other which was $15 billion free money, Yanukovych took the free money from Russia. That led to the West engineering a putsch, a coup d'etat against the elected president. We're supposed to be afraid. It's the weirdest thing. People are talking about supporting democracy in Ukraine. They overthrew an elected president. This new game that people go on the streets and overthrow elected presidents. We saw this in Thailand. We're seeing this in Venezuela, where the 1% is going out in the street and trying to overturn elections. That's what happened in Ukraine. And I got to tell you, Zach came back from Kiev 2 weeks ago with pictures of from the demonstrations. And like you say, not everyone's a Nazi, not everyone's a fascist, but we have pictures of the pretend stormtroopers, the swastikas. It is it's not very pretty. It looks like 1933.
Well, your analysis is exactly like mine, because we're not reading from the same sheet of music. That's what's going on. But then you turn on the news, wonderful freedom fighters, and they're burning buildings and burning police and shooting police that have done nothing, overthrowing the government. And then Russia, and I'm not romanticizing Russia, but they grab an area that's always been part of Russia in the past, where they've had a bunch of wars, the Crimean War. They grab their military bases, their naval base, their gas pipelines, and you would think they'd started World War III. Now they're kicking them out of the G8. Obama's worried about nukes going off. This sounds like they're trying to start a new Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to keep the Cold War is very effective in controlling the American people, and our leaders and the elite really miss it. Like the banks can't impose, they can't terrorize you into giving up your rights. They need some type of boogeyman out there, and Putin looks like a hitman from Central Casting, and believe me, he kind of is. He's no sweetheart, but Crimea is Russian. If we believe that the Ukraine had the right to vote to free itself from the Soviet Union, then how come the same right isn't afforded the Crimea? In fact, we've demanded that Russia's agreed to hold a referendum nearby in Chechnya next year, where they get to vote whether to leave Russia. So on one hand, we're saying, you can say that if the people want to leave Russia, they can, and the Russians have agreed to that vote. But now when the Crimeans want to join their Russians, they want to join their fellow Russians, and by the way, they get a nice deal out of it because they get better pensions by becoming Russians. Suddenly that's anti-democratic. Now, which is it? We just supported the creation of South Sudan, which didn't even take 1 year for that to turn into a cannibalistic war. So it's, but again, I agree. This is part of the creation of a new Cold War, because now we need, we don't have communists there. Now we have Putin, and so we have to create the Russian bear again is threatening New York. Well, I'm here in New York. I've looked down 2nd Avenue, and I haven't seen Red Army tanks rolling down the street. What I see is a lot of unemployed people who are hoping are begging the bankers walking by for extra quarters.
Well, that's right. And I want to come back and get into the latest banker escapades. And then I want to shift gears in 25 years, Exxon Valdez, how that ties to BP, your breaking news on that front. And I want to ask you about the banker suicides when we come back. So we're going to come back to Greg Palast right after this quick break. Here is the headline out of Bloomberg before they changed it. Banker deaths leave industry concerned as coroners probe. And they've now changed it today to this. We'll show folks a document cam of that when we come back or during the break. But there it is. Good job, guys. Johnny on the spot. Bankers' deaths shine light on stress of industry tunnel vision. The same article yesterday was that the coroners were probing. Greg Palast is our guest. There's so much crazy news up at Infowars.com. I'll get to some of it when we come back in the next segment and get Greg's take on it. But Ukraine's Night of the Long Knives, Kurt Nimmo, students suspended for shaving head in support of cancer patient. Man, the attack on free speech in this country. DOD military training to, quote, scare the crap out of people in Florida. State senators' response to Second Amendment concerns. Go F yourselves. That's going super viral. They're already all over the mainstream news criticizing him for saying it. So that's broken big time with our reporter Dan Badandi in Rhode Island. Uncensored video. Police execute homeless man for camping. It's unbelievable. Ukraine leader leaked recording. 8 million Russians in Ukraine must be killed with nuclear weapons. That's just some of the reports up on Infowars.com. And it's shocking and sensational because reality is sensational. People need to stop filtering what's really going on. And a sensational reporter breaking so many huge stories is Greg Palast. Greg, what do you know? I know no one who's got more investigative connections than you. And the numbers of bankers and comptrollers and key management people that would be involved in cover-ups, these are key risk analysis certifiers. As a top fraud investigator, do you think this is all suicides or could there be foul play?
I'm not going to say a word, Alex. In the middle of investigation. I'm an investigative reporter, so until the investigation's done, I can't report. Just remember, we have a $1 trillion fraud that was uncovered, the LIBOR fraud. That is, when you get your adjustable rate mortgages, when you get anything that's involved with an adjustable rate, that involves the what's called the London Interbank Overnight Rate. That's behind all the interest rates, and that's set by a private group of bankers. It's not some type of government agency. It's not a computer algorithm. It's about 8 guys who get together in a room and say what our interest rates will be tomorrow morning. And that's what I'm looking at. And where I've gotten with it, I can't say because I haven't gotten far enough yet. But when I report it, you'll be the first to know.
Wow. So you are hot on the trail, Greg Palast, right now of this. Do we have any number on how many it is? It's in the dozens and dozens now.
No, and one of the problems statistically is that, people do kill themselves and people do get knocked off for all kinds of reasons.
But there's certainly a big uptick right now. So even if they're not being murdered, what are they depressed about?
Well, that's what we're trying to investigate. That's where we have to go. We got so many investigations going on now. It's one of the trails we're trying to pick up. So like I say, I have so many stories to report. I'm always afraid to talk about anything in the middle of an investigation where I don't have all the facts in front of me. You know me, I'm Mr. Here's the documents guy. So I'm going to stick with those right now.
I want to come back and get into 25 years after Exxon Valdez, but in the 3 minutes we've got in this short segment, long one coming up, Greg Palast, what's the biggest banker story right now? I mean, they're doing so much.
Wow. Well, I would say that right now, the big bank story is really going back to the foreclosure crisis. We had a bunch of banks who were selling predatory mortgages. The line that's being used in the media is that 4 million people who lost their homes. Oh, they got those loans because they couldn't afford them. Well, they could afford them when they got them at 4%. Somehow, as interest rates are dropping, people's adjustable rate mortgages, and many people listening to this will recognize this in their own bills that they're getting monthly, somehow are going from 4% to 11%. Their monthly payments are doubling and tripling. Now, I don't care who you are. The average American, if your payment for your home triples, you are going to lose your home. And in places like Detroit, where the industry, like the auto industry, collapsed, you're going to lose your home. But the problem was these were predatory mortgages, these subprime mortgages, and anyone who tried to attack this system, these were given out by Bank of America's countrywide unit. In fact, the head of the countrywide unit, this guy Mazzillo, what became Bank of America's unit, and he was the shill for them. The guy earned $600 million. Now, I want to say, not his company, he personally, selling these criminal mortgages, earned $600 million. He didn't spend an afternoon in prison. J.P. Morgan issued billions of dollars in predatory mortgages. That's a crime under federal law. And all I know is that instead of jail time, Jamie Dimon has been to the White House about 90 times to talk to Mr. Obama, who calls Jamie